it's commercially viable in the sense that being a B Corp accredited brings in new business or helps with business. I absolutely can attest that it does. Yeah, it's really simple, is that we are living proof that there is a return on investment for this stuff. That's it, There is definitely a return on investment for this without any track record in master planning. Trust us to be able to regenerate entire neighborhoods.
Hello, my name is Alex Harrington-Griffin. I'm your host of the Real Developer podcast, powered by LandTech, the creators of Land Insight and Land Fund. In this episode 8, my co-host Jonny Britton, who's the CEO of LandTech, joined me for part 2 of this conversation with Joseph Rajah, the CEO of Joseph Homes, for a very important conversation around achieving B Corp status and building sustainably for SME developers. Together, we discuss everything from MMC to volumetric building, to really digging into the ROI that is possible and very evident through attempting the B Corp accreditation status. So on that note, let's get on with the show. I think if you guys are happy to, let's segue straight to the second part of the discussion. This part I really want to dig into, and it'd be a crime not to kind of dig into this with you. I know we've over lunch discussed some of the concepts that you've hinted at today, things like Concrete Zero. I've made a note that I would love to understand a bit more about that. I think one of the things that I'm always curious is, you've mentioned your journey in getting to this point, spending time with NGOs, and that's informed the way that you want to do business.
Yeah.
Are there firms out there, or in order to name them, but in terms of like the principles, the actions they're taking, whether they're B Corp registered or not, but do you think there's firms out there that are really demonstrating in the property sector the right ethos of what developers could do, who are going to maybe they're part of Concrete Zero, maybe they're not, but are there firms out there you think, do you know what? Cool. They're also doing something that I really think is going to help this space.
Yeah, absolutely. There's I think now is a real renaissance when it comes to the ethos and the messaging and the mission of real estate companies. Things are changing, definitely for the better. And it's not. It's becoming less and less about tick boxing and greenwashing, and it's more that these people genuinely feel that this is the right thing to do, and they also know that it's the right thing to do commercially, like it's profitable to do this. And I think that's becoming more of a realization now. I wouldn't probably name names, but I would, if that's, or are you asking me to name?
No.
Okay, right.
Just more sort of the actions you're seeing firms taking. We look at things like, I'm sure you benefit it, and I know Jonny wants to dig into the B Corp status a little bit more, but we've seen, funders who are offering reduced entry, arrangement fees and exit fees, whatever, for achieving certain EPCs. From a developer's perspective, are there certain activities you're seeing that you think, do you know what, that will stand this industry in good stead for years to come by the actions they're taking? What are some of those activities you're seeing?
Well, one big change I've seen from the funding perspective is an increasing resistance from funders to knock down huge buildings in order to replace them with something which isn't that much more significant in this place. And I think that's I've not seen that before in 15 years, actually. Or at the very least, questioning why you're doing it, and saying, well, look, I know it's more profitable, but is it the right thing to do? I'm not sure we can get behind this. Which I thought was fantastic. Obviously, there's green finance and things like that out there, but I got to say, we've never actually taken on any kind of green finance or impact funding. We've never really seen, up until now, the real benefit of it as a real change, a real assistance to help you do what you're doing. There isn't really that much of a significant discount in order to assist. There is simply businesses out there that have put sustainability credentials within their terms just as a nice to have rather than something that's actually need to have. We're seeing that change. We're seeing that actually now that the rates are becoming, the delta between an unsustainable development to a sustainable development in terms of rates is increasing, which I think is a good thing. And now we're seriously looking at that kind of finance. In-depth analysis into supply chain. We've seen from coming from all angles, coming from the funders who are funding us, coming from ourselves and improving the way that we are supplied, but coming from our customers as well, just saying like, well, who provided this brick and who provided you with this glass and what's their sustainability credentials, etc. So going down the supply chain and making sure that you are working as much as you can, reasonably, with the right people, I think that's becoming more and more of a thing. I think this thing is going to be the sustainability and generally using a business as a force for good is going to be led by the market, and rather than generally by regulation. I think the market's asking for it now, and I think if you're not on board now, you're going to become quite obsolete.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we've mentioned the B Corp status a little bit. I think Jonny wants to dig into it as well. One pioneer to another. You were the first UK property developer to achieve B Corp status. Is that,
I think so.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, definitely first house builder.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure the first property developer as well, but I don't know for sure.
For the sake of this podcast, we're running with that as fact as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Jonny, you pioneered in LandTech. I think you should run with the questioning around it.
Sure. I mean, we're also very interested in it. As I think I said in the previous podcast, I would like to say that it wasn't unusual for more property developers to kind of take some of the stances that you've taken in the way you do your work. But it is still nascent. And so why did you decide to commit? Because
to B Corp.
To B Corp, yeah. And I guess like how just a few technical things, like how do you do it? When might you not do it? And maybe get onto it being quite a tough market out there. Some of this stuff is going to necessarily cost to bring a cost to you. So how do you kind of turn that into an opportunity? Okay,
so we embarked on the B Corp journey a few years ago. We've just renewed actually, which is quite good. As a result of us wanting to come out with our own accreditation system. So we have this thing called Livewell manifesto, which we've had for a while, which sets out exactly what best practice is for us to be a property developer, an SME property developer. And it covers our pillars, which are how we treat and work with our customers, how we treat and work with our neighborhoods, how we treat and work with the planet, and how we treat and work with our team, our company. And all of those things are prescribed. And so when we wanted to come out and say, like, this is our accreditation, this is what we do for ourselves, we came across B Corp. And we thought, actually, they're actually doing it well. They're doing it actually better. It's much more sophisticated than what we were doing. And it's globally recognized. And I like Ben & Jerry's. And Ben & Jerry's was a B Corp. So I thought, right, let's look at this. And we met with them. We were super impressed by the senior management there, the senior team, the CEO. And they really do mean it. They feel it. They live their lives by it. They're for real. And so we were just sort of impassioned. We were inspired by these guys, and we decided to go through the journey. The journey is arduous, obviously, and it's rightfully so. It needs to be this, exclusive club in promoting inclusivity, if you know what I mean. So they're trying to expand as much as they can within the parameters of what it means to become a B Corp, which is hard. And you've got to look at every single aspect of your business and know and get some. It's based on a point system. You get points for various different aspects of your business, whether it's your team, sustainability, and diversity and inclusion, all kinds of different other things. And you score yourself. And then we scored ourselves and realized we actually scored pretty well, but we thought that we were better than what we scored. And so we had to take a look at our business and make some changes as well. Which was an interesting process and a good sort of self-reflection on myself as well, that I realized that I needed diversity and inclusion training. I needed to really understand what this was all about. And I think because of the color of my skin, I just assumed I automatically qualified as somebody that knew everything about diversity. And obviously, diversity is much more than gender and race. And I learned that process, which has made a better CEO of me. And I think that's really helped. I think going for a B Corp status, and it's not just B Corp, there are other accreditations out there as well, but going through a B Corp status is a great thing to do at any time, because I don't think the time invested in it is wasted even if you don't get in. Like, I think it's a really good process to go through for your business. It lifts the lid on the whole thing. It tells you some brutal truths about yourself and the business, which you may or may not want to change. You might want to change, not want to change all of it. But without that, you're sort of running blind, in terms of whether or not your business is actually a force for good. So I think it's a helpful thing. There are costs involved. You need to have a czar of B Corp within your business in order to make it happen. And it can't be the CEO. There's no time for the CEO to be able to do this. So you need somebody within the business that is going to take it on as part of their role. as the accreditation process, but also maintaining it and ensuring every single level of the department is running at an optimum level in terms of B Corp points, as it were. You mentioned it's a difficult market now and there's a cost to it, etc. Yes, you just have to do it slower, but you don't. It costs a lot when you do it quick. When you're trying to do it quickly because you're making changes super quick. But if you can make the changes over a slower period of time, and then you'll get accredited that way. In terms of whether or not it's commercially viable in the sense that B Corp, being a B Corp accredited brings in new business or helps with business, I absolutely can attest that it does, but not in the ways that everybody probably thinks. So it's not necessarily you become a B Corp accredited and then funders and everyone's banging down your door to give you cheaper funding. Customers are saying, I'll buy your flat for more money, or people want to join your company for less salary, or any of that kind of stuff. That doesn't happen. But what does happen is that you start the conversation from the right step, from the right place when you're talking to local planning authorities, when you're talking to people you want to recruit, when you're talking about to funders, and generally when you're talking to the market, you are coming from a place where you are now certified that you're not bullshitting. And I think that's really important because everybody's just so tired of the noise, and I think certification just cuts through all of that, and that's what really helps. And so I think B Corp accreditation, or any kind of accreditation, that we've chosen B Corp, which I think is quite good, is really important to do so that you don't have to prove yourself from day one that you are really meaning what you say.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that probably opens up a nice discussion. I think also, Jonny, I'd like to lean in on this as well. You spoke about previously selling homes for more money, the cheaper finance rates as well. I think that's where, from the circles that I sit in and hear developer conversations, there's always that debate of, yeah, but things are tough, as Jonny said, and I've got to focus on the core business. I've got to focus on bottom line. But we also recognize that these dramatic changes are often encouraged if there is a return, if there is some way to validate, I'm going to make these changes for the good of my business, for the good of the industry, for the good of my buyers, stakeholders. And I know there's going to be a good return. It's going to make business sense at the same time. Where do you think we are now in terms of the nice to haves? And we talk about, making the eco home as well. The debate around where the buyer, we had Stratton Parker on the previous episode talking about, what the buyers are looking for versus what looks nice in a brochure or a tick box. Where do you think we are now in terms of things that are really coming into their own and making a difference for the property development space? And where do you think there's still some nice to haves that really aren't moving the needle from a business perspective? And Jonny, if you've got any views on that as well, please lean in.
So the nice to haves in the sense of the things that we want to do within our mission to become a better.
Whether it's the way you build or the way that you procure or the teams that you hire, what is that in that ESG sort of title? What do you think are absolutely coming into their own now and making a difference in a business versus they sound good, but they're not really moving anything in terms of product or bringing in great funding rates, whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay. So the return on investment is what we're talking about here in terms of a B Corp and what you prioritize because it returns more investment sooner. I would say the number one thing right now for us is air quality. That is the one thing that you translate directly into the subconscious of a buyer in terms of their personal safety. And I think when you do that, you are, at the very least, you're improving sales rates and you're improving rental rates. You rent quicker, you sell quicker. So I think if people are going to focus on a singular thing that now they want to get a return on quicker, it is improve the air quality within your offices, within your industrial sheds, within your PBSA, within everything that you've got. Improve it to its maximum possible ability because you are going to be very quickly competing with people who are. And if there isn't a premium already on your rents or your sales, there's going to be a discount soon. So air quality is the big one, I think, because it's an immediate result. In terms of sustainability, we're not seeing any kind of premium or return on investment or saleability, increase in sales or reduction in interest costs or anything like that right now, because genuinely, no matter how much everyone talks about a climate emergency, whether it's the local authorities or whether it's central government, and we've seen what the change of central government have just done in terms of their targets, it doesn't win votes. It doesn't make sales. What it does is it's just the right thing to do. And so you should just always not neglect it, but you're not going to see, I don't think, a return on investment in the residential space, in the living space right now on making something hugely sustainable. But if you have highly sustainable development, you are more likely to make a sale. You are more likely to make something rent. So I don't think you should neglect it because you don't immediately see any kind of premium or increase in sales rates. I think it's something that you should just do commercially because it's commercially viable. I think a really good return on investment right now are people. In terms of people want to work somewhere where they're aligned and in what they believe in, especially if you're recruiting of a certain age bracket. It's the first question that we get asked, in interviews, when we're out doing headhunting or we're at fairs or whatever it is. Salaries are given, the commissions are all given, all of that's okay, fine. If somebody is good at their job, they're going to expect a certain amount of remuneration. That's sort of by the side now. It's now am I going to enjoy it there? And the number one thing is whether someone feels fulfilled or enjoy it at our business is whether they're aligned with the principles of the business. Not with the principles that people just simply talk about, but what we actually do. So there's a lot of investigation that goes on by the super good candidates in terms of whether or not we're actually doing what we say we're doing. And so the return on investment there is you actually do get better people into your business by fulfilling every aspect of your ESG mission.
That's very interesting. Jonny, anything you would add to that you're looking at the moment? Obviously, think about the wider stakeholders as well, but anything you think that is an absolute need at the moment versus a nice to have?
I mean, we all kind of need to get on board and start making some differences on behalf of our future generations. I think there's definitely a mindset that needs to be brought in, and you can see it from the younger people now that they care deeply about that. It wasn't so much of a thing as when we were growing up, but it's that younger generation really seemed to have caught onto the messaging that the time is now to act. But does that change anything in the short term? It's really not obvious if it does, or what pressure are you on from the market to do anything there? People need homes. We're not building enough of them. I think it's proven out that if you do something high quality, a passive house standard, there's demand there, and you'll sell them, and there's premiums. High build quality is desirable. It's probably not going to come from the large house builders. They've got their models, they've rolled them out. So I think that once the enough demand is coming from the premium end, it'll start to filter down, and then it will be about is your brand going to be something that can cater for this new demand from the premium end of the market, from the people getting older. But right now, I mean, it's not there, and the government is, if anything, is winding backwards and letting things continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that point, I totally agree. Another aspect that we're seeing in terms of return on investment is the fact that we're now in the alternative space and we're operating buildings. We're seeing that our sustainability credentials is reducing energy costs in our buildings quite significantly. So there's one of our buildings is a reduction in energy costs up to 60%. Sorry, not up to 60%. Sorry, up to 30% of energy costs have been saved. So yeah, I mean that's huge on an OPEX basis.
One of the things that we discussed when we had lunch together, some amazing seafood a couple months ago, was obviously part of the initial motivation of LandTech and starting LandTech was to bring data to the people to help everyone in the industry and the sort of the communities make better decisions or understand what's going on. And one of the things that we spoke about as well is part of your mission around the BCorp was going around and educating businesses about BCorp status as well, becoming almost an ambassador for the property industry as well, which I really commend you on. And you also talked about putting together indexes and ledgers that help people understand making sustainable material choices. Where do you think the industry is now for the average SME in terms of, okay, if BCorp is not quite there on their horizon just yet, but they want to start making better decisions, understanding some of the reason to do so, both profitability and also doing good at the same time. How easy is it, do you think, it is for businesses to kind of access that information, to understand where can I go and take an MMC route to development versus just doing traditional? Do you think it's something that needs to be improved? Where do you think we are in terms of access to that information?
I'm so glad you asked me that, because we are now compiling our the Livewell manifesto, the renewed one now, that we're going to make open source. And this is what we believe is best practice for ourselves, and the routes to the sources of information, and where to go, and where MMC works for us, for tall buildings, for houses, for medium rise, what materials that we use. Again, on these same 4 pillars about the customer, the neighborhoods, the planet, and our company. And most importantly is how to do all of this profitably. And this is the key, is that doing this commercially, in a commercially viable way, is where it's difficult. You have these accreditation systems like WELL and BCorp and BREEAM, etc., but they don't lend itself to whether or not something is commercially viable to do it. And generally, a lot of the times, especially in this market, it isn't. And so, in terms of answering both of your questions, actually, one, where's the market now? You can source all this information. It's out there. We are getting it from somewhere, but there is nowhere where it's consolidated into one thing for an SME property developer that they can go and go, right, well, I'm going to look at this. I'm going to do some of it now. I'm going to do some of it later when I'm more profitable, and then so on, and just take you on the same journey that we've been on in 15 years. We're doing much more now than we were doing 15 years ago, but only because we have the source of capital now, which is different. We are building a scale, which is different. We are better teams and talent and stuff like that. We are a different company than we were 15 years ago. But if you utilize this Livewell manifesto as a startup, you can then just put yourself on the same journey that we've done, learn from the same mistakes that we have made, and probably accelerate quicker than we have.
Well, I think that's an amazing point, and thank you for sort of being so open to sharing the open source consideration. Jonny, it's obviously a journey you've gone through, and you've hit the nail on the head. Going from being a previous developer myself, going to 8 or 9 different websites just to appraise a site. Land Insight comes along, completely changes the game, and suddenly everything's consolidated in one place, and you can make informed decisions quicker because developers are busy. You said a lot of them are, working async to actually learn and still produce the product. Is there any suggestions, Jonny, that you'd give to Joseph or just the industry in terms of seeing this come to life? Because it is important in terms of the future generations that you've mentioned.
Seeing which bit come to life?
So in terms of making, open source or bringing data to life, consolidating data for the industry so that people can make better decisions, but without having to go and hunt it down from 15 different sources.
Yeah, I mean, right now, it takes leadership. The industry needs leaders. Things are going to need to change. There's problems in the industry now, and there's problems looming. There's a huge real estate, real buildings that are not fit for standards, and coming down the pipeline, those standards are going to be tougher to get it to meet. And so right now, it takes people like Joseph who've got who are going to take the cost onto themselves and show the industry how it's done, and demonstrate why it's a better way of doing things. I would like to think that LandTech has also attempted of moving the industry forward, and we try a lot of things. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. But some of the things, when it works, it really is super useful. And there's I guess an attitude of stepping up, and of not being afraid to fail. And if you do, dust yourself down and go again. I think that in a very conservative, slow-moving real estate world, it's a bit easy, as you say, to be comfortable and to just keep doing things as they were. But if we want change, I think it's just people taking a look at themselves and thinking, do they want to be part of it, or does it want to happen around them?
To give you credit, and this is not a chance for a plug, but taking the land appraisal process from an hour and a half down to about 10, 15 minutes for me previously, that's quite a big shift in the way things are done. So I think you can be very, very proud on that level. The leadership piece is also very interesting.
Joseph, I'm very interested. We've talked about ESG. We've talked about some of the things that you're doing. You've given examples of the ROI being that you can attract in better talent. Professionals desire to be part of a company that's doing things better. That's a differentiator. When will this become when will SME developers just have to get on board with this? When will the war for talent, mean that if they're not positioned well in the market, if they're not like that, or what is there any evidence now that it's now, or is this something that's for the future?
I think to bolt onto that as well, finance as well. When will these, the fight for talent, the fight for decent rates, rates is extremely difficult at the moment. So to add into that, the wider piece, do you think there's any push that's going to drive SMEs to really have to get on board, or?
It's difficult for me to answer that because I am in a bit of an echo chamber at the moment. I've hired people who are aligned. I speak to people who are aligned. I'm in a podcast with two people who are aligned. I'm selling to customers who want to buy from a company that's aligned. And so everyone I speak to, it seems to me that everyone's on board. But when you go to speak, when you go to speak to other sort of national house builders, it does seem somewhat that they're sort of stuck in the past. I think, and the question it really is an SME is never going to be able to pay the same amount as a national house builder for the exact same job. It's just not going to happen in the time, simply because we just, it's the different companies. So the question is whether or not, is there ever going to be a time where somebody is going to take a job where salary isn't at the top of their priority, and it is somewhere lower, and I think that happens the earlier on you are in the career and the later you are in the career. In the middle, salary becomes much more important because you're having kids, you are moving house, you are doing certain things, you have certain obligations. When you're young, you're probably living at home, you are fully aspirational, you're inspired, you're going on marches and all kinds of different things. And so you attract those. And then you kind of lose them. And then they come back when they've made their money. And now they're thinking, right, I've been sort of plugging away in a PLC for so long, so it's a little bit soulless. I want to come and join a company, an SME, to do something that's actually not meaningful, but something more aligned. And the sacrifice of that is a bit of a pay cut. Like that's what we're seeing. So in order to answer your question in a really wrong roundabout way, when is that middle going to compress down? And when is that when is that delta going to happen? I think that is a long way off. The only way to entice that is for companies to sacrifice margin to be able to pay more to attract those kind of people in. And I think that's just like we sacrifice margin to build sustainably. We sacrifice margin to build with a low toxicity. The question for us is, will we sacrifice margin? Will there be a time when we're prepared to sacrifice margin to bring that kind of talent in? And I think that will be as soon as there is a premium on board that compensates for the rest of the sacrifices you're making. So as soon as there's a premium on board for the sustainability or a premium on board for the air quality or anything else that you're doing, then I think we can afford to start paying for that middle to come in. And when that happens, when the middle comes in, I think everything changes. I think funding changes. I think mission statements changes. I think the BCorp accreditation goes through the roof. I think everything will change as soon as that middle compresses, that delta compresses.
I think to keep doing what you're doing will certainly help, from what we can see, accelerate that process. So good on you, and thank you for flying the flag in that space. Just to round off this part, and unfortunately the episode as well, I'm going to squeeze you on the same piece I did at the end of the last part as well, which is to condense down in as close to 60 seconds, what would be, we've spoken about a lot of things around ESG, around BCorp, around what's going to move the needle to get people taking the decision. What would you say to the SME developers listening in now to sort of really go back? And what we always try and prompt, Joseph, with this is people to listen to it and go back to their team or their partner, whoever is involved in their business, to say, do you know what? I heard something interesting today. We could have a little bit to think about that as well. Is there one seed you'd like to plant in the mind of the SME developers listening?
Yeah, it's really simple. Is that we are living proof that there is a return on investment for this stuff. That's it. There is definitely a return on investment for this. It's commercially viable to do. When I say to do, I mean to become a B Corp or to push your ESG credentials and to actually walk the walk. It's the return on investment is quicker than you think, and it then starts becoming exponential. Where we have gone from developing a sites of maybe 100 to 150 flats to now having a 1,500 master plan scheme where local authorities, without any track record in master planning, trust us to be able to regenerate entire neighborhoods. Because even though we don't have the experience of doing that from beginning to end, they know that no matter what, we'll do the next right thing. And I think that's what I would say to people.
Perfect. Joseph, thank you very much for joining us and all your effort in the preparation. And Jonny, thank you for lending your perspective, being an awesome co-host as well. So thank you, gents.
Thank you very much. Really good.
Hello everyone, it's your host Alex Harrington-Griffin again, just to say thank you for joining us for this episode. If you liked it, hit the like button, subscribe, and of course, share it with your peers. A big thank you to our partners LandTech for powering this episode. If you want to find out more about their products like Land Insight or Land Fund, go to land.tech or follow LandTech on LinkedIn for SME developer updates, finance updates, and of course the data and research mentioned in this episode. We'll see you back for the next session when we get into some real development conversation. Thank you.